Welcome back to the Mind and Money podcast. I'm Val, a financial planner.
And I'm Sherry, a financial coach. And today we are excited to have Christy with us. She is an executive function and accountability coach. And she is here to share some amazing strategies that we know we need.
Yes. So thank you, Christy, for coming on. And can you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Yeah. Well, first of all, thank you, ladies, so much for having me on. I'm so excited to talk to Sherry again. Sherry was a guest on my podcast a couple of months back. And then it's nice to meet you, Val. But I started my entrepreneur business or journey in 2009 as a professional organizer. And through that, I started learning about ADHD because I had some clients with ADHD. And as I'm working through this process of earning these certificates of working with ADHD populations, I started to have the sort of light bulb moment of oh, wait a minute, this kind of sounds familiar. And fast forward, it took me 12 years, I think, to finally seek a diagnosis. And really, it was the combination of my son was diagnosed. And then in 2021, I actually was diagnosed with breast cancer and went through treatment for that. And it kind of was a wake-up call to really start taking seriously all parts of my health. So I went and got my diagnosis. It was an amazing sort of light bulb moment for me in terms of everything kind of fell into place. It was like life was a giant puzzle. And then all of a sudden, so many things had made sense. And here I am at 45 figuring this all out. And the way I got into coaching was probably because of ADHD. I decided to blow up my organizing business after being successful for 10 years. And there's no reason for me to stop being an organizer, but I was bored. So I decided I wanted to become a business coach. And so in 2019, I started working with moms as a business coach, and I started to notice a pattern where a lot of moms that were seeking business coaches also had ADHD. And so it was just sort of like the perfect marriage of I'm exploring and learning more about my personal ADHD, plus the background that I already had, along with this sort of newer business that I started. And I really wanted to help and serve ADHD mom business owners because as somebody who had been in several business coaching groups or, worked with several coaches, I felt like there was a real gap in the industry for that specific area because there were mom business coaches, there were ADHD business coaches, but I think it's a really unique perspective to be able to serve moms with ADHD because it is a very unique juggling act that we all have if we have ADHD and we're trying to have a family and we're trying to run a business and, we just don't have enough spoons left at the end of the day when we're trying to manage all of our energy. And so that's kind of how I got to where I am today.
Yeah, that's so common. And I don't know if there's specific studies on it, but there's such a high percentage of individuals with ADHD that become entrepreneurs because there's so many things that create challenges for us in their traditional workspace. And being able to have the flexibility of being self-employed is really game-changing. But you're right, without some strategies to keep all the tiny humans alive and all the balls in the air, it does become next level challenging. It's challenging to be a parent and to raise kids and work or run a business, but you throw ADHD into the mix and it really, it
Bermuda
really
Triangle. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And so, Christy, you have some strategies to help with the busy mompreneur because we need some help.
Yeah. Well, one thing that I want to kind of start talking about, and I think that this sort of directly relates to your listeners, is I like to think of time, which is something that most of us moms need help with juggling. Even those that aren't executive function challenged may have struggles with time management, just you overschedule or you just don't have time for all the things. And I like to think of time like I think of money, right? So if you have a certain amount that you can spend each day, where are you going to spend your time dollars? What are the important things that you need to be spending your time dollars on? And, the thing is different is there's no credit card for time, right? There's no way that if something comes up, you can buy extra time. Although things like delegation or just deleting stuff off, that can maybe buy you a little bit of extra time. But in reality, you have a certain amount of time that is available. We all have the exact same amount of time every day. People that have their shit together they don't have extra hours. They just are using it better, right? And so that is something that I really try to emphasize to my clients is where are you spending your time dollars? And most often, one of the things I do with a client when we first start working together is I have this time tracker spreadsheet that they do. And for 2 weeks, in half-hour increments, they track what they're doing from the time they wake up in the morning until the time they go to bed at night. And what this does is I have like little codes that breaks it down into your work, your home and family, and yourself. And what I want to see is A, where are you spending your time? Because if you feel like your business isn't growing, are you spending enough time on it? Or if you feel like you're neglecting your family, where are you spending the time? And most importantly, the number one thing that literally every mom client that I have is where are you spending time on yourself? Because as an entrepreneur and as a mom, if you do not fill your cup, if you don't recharge your battery, none of this is going to be successful. You're going to hate your life as a mom. You're going to hate your life as a business owner, and you're going to burn out, right? So you need to make sure that you're making time for yourself. So we analyze where you're going to spend your time, and then we can make adjustments because just like with your money, you can't know where you can adjust your budget if you don't know where you're already spending it. Like you can say like, oh, well, I want to spend 6 hours a week on marketing. Great. Well, what are you spending on marketing right now? If you're currently spending 12 hours a week on marketing, spending 6 hours isn't going to help you, right? So, that is sort of like the first step in making sure that you're adequately spending your time dollars.
Do you often see with those clients that go through that exercise that they're surprised at the end of the 2 weeks?
Oh, absolutely.
Yes.
Nobody ever thinks they're spending as much money or money on social media as they do. Nobody. Everyone's always like, maybe I spend like a half hour, an hour a day. It's like 6 hours, like nobody thinks that they're spending as much time as, and that's fine. Like I'm not trying to judge because during the pandemic, I had to literally like block myself because I was like 8-9 hours a day, just scroll. So like, there's no judgment here. All I want is the information because like I said, we can't make change if we don't know what to change. But it's typically people are surprised that they're not spending any time on themselves and they're surprised at how much they're spending on social media. And, it really just gives us a very clear place where we can usually analyze where we make cuts. I've yet to have a client that comes in and does it and there's nowhere we can adjust because there's always something that you're either spending too much time on that can be cut back so that you can see the results that you want, or a place that we can add in time for those things that are really going to be beneficial for your family life or for your business that were previously taken up with maybe, things that didn't matter as much.
Yeah, I love that. And when your clients are tracking social media time, are they separating that this is my working, I'm creating content for my business, and this is I'm scrolling and not being as productive?
Typically, because that would fall under, so there's 3 categories and you put either a W for work, an FH for family and home, or a SC for self-care in the box. And then it turns a different color when you put those things in.
Sometimes it crosses and commingles together.
Yeah. So usually they'll put it under work, right? If they're doing it for a marketing purpose. Now, if I see an exorbitant amount of time being spent on work, we'll talk about what are you doing during those work hours? And what we might do as we dig down is realize that the work is what you're saying. I go on to post on Instagram and I end up spending 45 minutes scrolling. So we can kind of work into that crossover. But yeah, I mean, obviously there is going to be, all of it kind of blends. One thing that I really like to talk about is I see motherhood as a business owner as a wheel, right? There's those 3 different parts. There's the work part, there's the home and family part, and there's the self-care part. And the pieces of that wheel may not always be equal, but each thing needs a slice, right? Because if you take out that self-care piece, you've just got half a circle, right? That wheel's not going to roll. And to me, a wheel represents balance better than a teeter-totter. It's not about having everything be equal across a teeter-totter. It's about, is everything that's important to you, that you value, getting a slice, right? So that wheel can roll. And so that's really what we're looking at is your work 90%? And then you've got these teeny tiny little slivers for your family and for your self-care, or vice versa. Sometimes people come in and they're like, I don't understand why my business isn't growing. And yet they're spending so much of their week running kids around to and from practices, or all these other mom things or home things that they need to be doing. So, obviously there's going to be a blend. It's all going to kind of work together. But yeah, you're absolutely right that there is that risk, especially with ADHD, to to get a little distracted.
Well, and to have that complete misinformation of how long you think something takes, because I'm just going to like put a post together real quick and you think it's going to take 10 minutes and 45 minutes later, you're still there, because we're not really good with quick and dirty when it comes to a lot of things. And I know for social media, I've let things go a little bit more, but I used to really think everything had to be top quality and it has to be super polished. And now I'm just
because those 3 people that are going to say that they like it are really going to judge you if it's not perfect.
Right.
Exactly. Girl, I've been there. I'm not making fun. I've totally been there. So another thing that I like to do with clients is if they're struggling with that exact thing, right? If they feel like their time blindness is just out of control in terms of like, I say I'm going to make 3 social media posts this morning and it ends up taking 10 hours, right? Make a task time list, right? Because you're going to better be able to block out your day and figure out how much things are taking you if you actually time yourself, right? And I recommend this for work tasks, but also for home tasks. Because, for instance, I hate doing the dishes. I absolutely hate it. I would rather stick knives under my fingernails than have to do dishes on a regular basis. If my version of hell would be washing dishes and wrapping gifts, that would be the 2 things. If I had to do that for eternity, I would know that I did not live a good life, right? So if you time yourself, I timed myself doing the dishes, full thing of dishes. It took me 15 minutes. So all those times that I try to talk myself out of doing it because, oh, I don't have time to do it, or, oh, it's going to take too long, I now have hard, concrete evidence that it only takes 15 minutes. And sometimes that can help to get me over the motivational hurdle. Like, I just have to do this for 15 minutes, or maybe I'll go find a podcast that I want to listen to, and that'll be my reward while I'm doing the dishes or something like that. And to your point, like about making a social media post, oh, now I know that I need to budget an hour to do this social media post. Now, if you can't budget an hour, that's when we start talking about, should you hire somebody to do that for you? Should you scale back? Like, what's your range of expectations? What would be good? What would be better? What would be best? Can you work with good because you don't have time in your schedule for best right now? And so it's very intricate, right? It's not just a matter of like, know where you're spending your time, make an adjustment, and everything is perfect going out. Like, every person is going to kind of be a little bit different in terms of how long things take and where they spend their time.
Yep. And I love that you look at it in a bigger time period, right? Because a lot of times we also want things to be done instantaneously. So maybe we track our time for a day or 2 and we're like, oh, well, I'm good. But really going over 2 weeks allows somebody to get clarity around, how am I really spending my time, and being able to have it more even in a larger chunk of time versus like every day is not going to be even, but the larger chunks of time really help. And I'm curious, when your clients start working with you, and maybe this isn't something you have the information on, but like, how many hours of sleep are they on average getting? Because that's something that I used to flex on around not sleeping as much as I should and like rolling out of bed and off like a dart to work. And now I'm like the complete opposite. And it's so much better for me mentally and physically. And I just think it's probably an area lots of people are taking from.
Yeah, absolutely. Sleep is, I say exercise and sleep are 2 of the most important things that you need to do if you have ADHD or any sort of neurodivergence, because your exercise is going to help boost your dopamine levels. It's going to increase the number of dopamine receptors that you have in your brain, which means that it's going to be easier to focus or initiate tasks or organize or plan. Sleep is when your brain rests and recharges. And so when you don't get enough sleep, because I used to be the exact same way, like 3.5, 4 hours, I was like, I'm good to go. I'm a rock star. And then I wondered why I felt like every 4 months I was having a nervous breakdown. Well, it's because my body literally was like, I cannot function anymore. Yeah. And so, sleep is definitely something that comes up, especially when people are really struggling to focus or they're just really struggling with motivation. We kind of get into, I would say most people come in at about 6 hours. And especially when your mom's like, that's probably good, but not great, right? That is like minimal, right? There are definitely people who do less, very rarely people who do more than the 8 hours that are recommended. But what we talk about is really getting solid with your evening routine, because getting yourself wound down, especially if you're somebody that's on a stimulant medication. So, if you've still got that kind of like around in your system, it may be harder for you to fall asleep. But if you can set up an evening routine that is going to help you to tell your body this warm shower, reading this book, doing this crossword puzzle, shutting the lights lower, like those are the things that are telling your brain. Yeah. Well, yeah, absolutely. Don't let that phone. I actually have clients that will charge their phones in the bathroom. Like they'll go in and brush their teeth and do all the things, and then they leave their phone in the bathroom when they go to bed for that exact purpose, because we have no impulse control, right?
Yeah, mine needs to be further away. Mine needs to be on another level.
You put it at the neighbor's house.
Would be ideal, but I also use app blocking apps so that I don't have access to them. And yes, I can get access to them, but I try not to. It's like a rule that I try and really stick to.
I am a huge fan of app blockers. The one that I have comes on at 9:30 at night and goes until midnight, because I usually try to get in bed between 9:30 and 10. Now on the Android, the app that I have, you cannot get around it unless you make a donation to charity. So
I love that.
Now Apple, because I've done so much research on app blockers, because it's a huge issue with a lot of my clients. Apple does not allow that. Like you have to have a way to get around it. It's something that they have in their contract with their app people, that like you have to be able to access the apps on the phone.
I was just about to ask you the name of it so I could write it down.
Yeah, nope. It's only available for Android right now, but there are 3 of them that are available for, and I don't know which one you're using. I know the one that I like to recommend most is called freedom.io. And it's available for Apple. And then you can also put it on your computer. So if you need a focused work session, you can have it block it out for a scheduled period of time. Like if every day you want to be working at your computer from, 10 a.m. to 12 p.m. and you don't want to be tempted to go on the internet or check in on TikTok or something like that, you can actually have it on your computer as well as on your phone, which I really like that. And I think well, don't quote me on this, but I think it's like $39.99 a year for that. So that's the Apple one that is sort of my go-to. And then I think the one for mine is called Detox. It's just basically, I just looked up app blocker in the Android store. I stumbled on this one and I've been using it for 4 years now. So I think that that's a really great thing. Any way that you can put those physical barriers in place. And I think that one thing, especially if women have been diagnosed with ADHD later in life, they have a shame around needing these kinds of things. They have a shame around, well, why can't I just control my impulses? Why do I have to why do I have to have 7 different bank accounts for my money to go into? Why can't I just have it all in one bank account and keep it organized like everybody else does? And I really am on a mission to get rid of that shame, because I think that it's empowering to be able to use your full potential because you have support. I look at it less as a crutch and more of it as a support. Like your brain just isn't working in the same way that other people are. And that's okay. If it's still getting you from point A to point B, then it's fine. It's okay that you have to write everything down, or that you have to put an app blocker on your phone, or you have to have 75 million reminders during the day on your Alexa so that you are keeping up and on track for your day. That's fine, because in the end, is it more important that you do something like everybody else, or is it more important that the things are getting done?
Yes. Oh, hell yes. You're right. We try and do things. Well, I should be able to do this. Okay, but if you can't, and history has proven that, and ADHD, we have this remarkable ability to think that tomorrow we're going to be this completely different human being, but we're not. So get the help.
Do you see a lot with the cycle as well?
What do you mean?
Excuse me. Like with cycling women or with their periods and energy.
Oh, yeah.
ADHD.
It's so funny. So the same email that I was just talking about that I sent earlier today, we were talking exactly about that, because she was talking about how she had gotten her period and that she was really struggling because she didn't feel good. And I was like, also, you're struggling because your estrogen levels have bottomed out right now, because that is the lowest your estrogen level will be within your cycle. The highest it will be is, right before you like ovulate, right? And then it sort of like goes down, and then you have your period, and then the cycle starts back up again, which is why I heard one time they're like, if you put a bunch of women in a boardroom and they sync up their cycles, that like week after their period, they would conquer the world because you have all the estrogen in your system, which is essential for making dopamine, right? That's why when we get into our 40s and we start with perimenopause or menopause, that brain fog really seems like it's hitting so hard is you have less estrogen in your system, which means you're making less dopamine, which means it's harder for your executive function, right? So same thing when you're in your cycle. When it gets low, you have less dopamine in your system. You're going to feel more brain fog on top of just feeling like icky and having headaches and cramps and all that kind of stuff. So give yourself grace, ladies. It's temporary, but there's a client of mine that actually tracks her cycle and tries to, because she is an entrepreneur and she has the capability of doing this, she tries to make sure that if her cycle is coming up to like her period week, she doesn't plan any big projects or things that are going to require a lot of focus and energy for those weeks. But then on the flip side, if something does require a lot of executive function, she tries to plan it for that week or two after because she knows that that's when she's going to be firing on all cylinders.
Yeah. Yeah. But previous request in one of our like tangents on a previous podcast was a scheduler that syncs up with our cycle trackers and automatically reduces our hours of availability around our our period starting. Because yes, we can do that manually, but I don't know of a scheduler that does that. And if there's ever an entrepreneur out there who's got like the ability to create apps and all of these things, there is about 72 ideas in our previous podcast episodes.
Just listen through.
Yeah, that is absolutely incredible. And yeah, like genius. Somebody needs to do that.
Are most of your clients that you work with medicated, or do you have other ways that you like sleep, exercise, other pieces of advice that you give to them if they're not, or if they are too?
Yeah. So I would say it's about 80-20. 80% is medicated. About 20% are not. Things that I recommend with those that choose not to medicate are, really being aware of your energy management, right? So I love to talk about what's called a chronotype. I don't know if you guys are familiar with that, but it's basically like a genetic thing. So it's like a scientific genetic thing. It's not like woo-woo, right? Where each one of us is kind of in our genes. We're a morning person, we're a middle of the day person, we're a night person, or we're kind of like erratic and all over the place. If you can figure out when your peak energy times are, and this doesn't vary because you're neurotypical or neurodivergent. Everybody has this, right? If you were to go out into the woods and there were no clocks and there were no cell phones and there were whatever, you would like resort to a certain thing. And it's similar to circadian rhythms, but circadian rhythms can change. Your chronotype is sort of like, it is what it is, right? You can't really change it or shift it. And if you can work with those peak energy times, especially if you're not medicated, you can choose to do those harder tasks, the things that it's harder for you to motivate yourself to do during your peak times, rather than trying to squeeze energy out of a time of day when you don't have it. So for instance, in my life, again, back to the dishes, I hate doing dishes. And I used to really beat myself up because after dinner, all I wanted to do is veg out on the couch and not do the dishes, but I would force myself to do it, or some days I wouldn't do it. And I would have a lot of guilt around this. And when I am a morning person, so I'm what they call a lion, I love being up at the ass crack of dawn. Today I woke up at 4:30. I woke up at 4:30 voluntarily. I woke up. I love being up early in the morning. So I started giving myself grace about getting the dishes done after dinner and started doing them in the morning. I have so much less resistance, right? So that's just kind of an example of like how you can work with your energy. We talked about exercise, we talked about sleep. The other thing is food. It's really, really important for you to make sure you're getting plenty of protein, because protein has the amino acids, the building blocks for the neurotransmitters that you need. So if you're not getting enough protein in your diet, then you're not giving the raw materials, the lysine and the tyrosine that you need to make serotonin and norepinephrine and dopamine in your system. And so you're already at a disadvantage with having ADHD, and then you're putting yourself at an even bigger disadvantage because you're not even producing the minimal amount that you can. So, and there's some other things that you can kind of do to boost your dopamine. Getting out into the sun is something. Some people caffeine works. Other people caffeine puts them to sleep. It just kind of depends. So I don't typically recommend that, but like if that is your thing, because caffeine is a stimulant, but sometimes it actually can have the inverse effect to those of us with ADHD. But yeah, those are some of the things that we'll talk about and that we'll try to incorporate when they are trying to figure out their schedule and their time blocks and when they should be working on things if they decide that they don't want to medicate.
What advice would you have for a mom who dedicated some time to tracking where they were spending their time and saw that there was no slice for them, and they know they need to increase that slice? What things would you suggest they look at first when it comes to giving themselves more time?
Yeah. So one thing is to delegate, right? Is there something that you can delegate in your business or in your family life? I think that in general, moms tend to pick up a lot of the invisible labor in the household. The invisible labor of running the kids to and from practices, or taking them to and from school, or, doing the stuff around the house, or even just like grocery shopping or meal preparation, or all of those things a lot of times fall on the women in the house. Is there a way that you can delegate or delete those tasks out of there, right? Can you ask your husband to pick up a grocery order at the store? He doesn't have to do the shopping. He just has to pick it up on the way home. Can you do a carpool with your kids so that some days you're driving, but some days another mom is driving or another dad is driving? I live in a very sort of hippy dippy community here in Columbus, Ohio, where the dads are very integral, and it's very common that they share the load a little bit more, which has been amazing. And I love that my boys are getting to see that as an example. In fact, I have 3 of their friends who I communicate with the dads. I don't even communicate with moms. I just communicate. If this kid wants to come over, I text the dad. So I think that we're slowly kind of getting to this more division of labor. I feel like the more generations we get, at least here in the United States, past, the women's movement and women really entering the workforce in larger numbers and things like that. Now that we're a couple of generations past, like everybody has a stay-at-home mom, you're starting to see a better division of labor. So the first thing is like, look for places that you can delegate. The second thing is like, be honest, because a lot of times when you're looking at your schedule and you're like, I can't give anything up, or there isn't any place, it's bullshit. Like there is definitely some place that you can do it. Like you may think that you're working all the way up until 9 o'clock at night, like working, meaning like you're doing stuff for your job, or you're doing stuff for your kids, or you're doing stuff for your home. But are you really? And, a lot of times if I start to drill down and ask questions, it gets a little wishy-washy in terms of like, oh, I guess you're right. I really don't need that long to do that. Or that's not something I have to do every day. I could replace that with something for myself. And the third thing I like to talk to people about is it doesn't have to be exorbitant or long. It can be your face care routine at night before you go to bed. I love skincare and face care and things like that. It takes me 10 minutes, right? But it's something I'm doing for myself. I do Duolingo every morning. I think normally it takes me 5 to 8 minutes to do a Duolingo lesson. But you know what? It's something I do just for myself that enriches me, and it takes 5 minutes. So I think sometimes we get caught in this trap that taking care of ourselves or doing something that is just for us as women or as moms has to take a lot of time, but it doesn't. It can just be these little pockets throughout the day where you are doing something that is specifically for you, that isn't in accordance to what you're doing for work or what you're doing for your family. It is something that you are doing specifically for yourself.
Yeah. Yeah, I love that. And I think too, if you can find ways to add a pocket of that time to first thing in the morning, you start your day off in a completely different frame of mind because you've taken some time for yourself before you give to others. And even if it's 5 minutes or 10 minutes, I've been doing meditation first thing in the morning. And full disclosure, I am an empty nester, so I don't have little ones to take care of. So my situation is a lot different. But that pocket of time where it's just me, I'm trying to like slow down my mind, starting my day in a good spot. And it really has been super impactful.
But if you take yourself back to when you did have your little one at home and you would shoot out of bed and go to work early, like imagine the version of yourself you could have given a little bit more love to and how you would have shown up.
I wouldn't have been an angry bitch every day because I really was. I was reflecting on this earlier this week, and I really pride myself now in having a slow morning. Like I am 2 hours from the time that I wake up to the time that I am doing work most days, and I'm working out, I'm meditating, I'm taking some time to read. And it just like, it's a complete shift from where I used to be. I used to, again, prideful of, yeah, I got up 15 minutes ago and now I'm at work. Like, what?
But
Yeah.
function.
even when you worked last year full time, were you still having those slow mornings? Like you still made that a routine.
Yes, but I
Right.
had more flexible schedule versus
Right.
mornings. I would start work at 4 o'clock in the morning. Gee, thank God I'm not doing that anymore. 4 o'clock in the morning, 6 o'clock. Like I worked crazy shifts, and I really did wear it as a badge of honor that I get to work
I
with
was
pillow
dead
creases.
asleep 15 minutes ago. But I think it comes to that it's the trend right now where if he wanted to, he would. If you wanted to, you would.
Mm-hmm.
Which is a tough pill to swallow because there's times where I'm like, I don't know where my day went, but I didn't have time to do this. And I'm like, yeah, you fucking did.
Yep.
Yeah, you did. You just didn't choose to prioritize it. And it's hard to not carry that shame.
It really is. It's also the shame, but also I think that there's a little like kickback that you get from it. Like there's sort of like a badge of honor to be like, I give so much to everybody else.
I'm
I
so
just
busy.
don't have time to do anything for myself. I'm like, fuck that. Like, get over it, ladies. You have to start taking care of yourself. You have to start it. Listen, I got breast cancer. I was the girl who didn't wear real deodorant. I was a vegan for several years. I, didn't drink much, smoked a little bit in my 20s, but didn't we all? Most of us, like we haven't had a microwave since 2003. Like I thought I don't clean with normal, regular cleaning products. I thought I was the girl that wasn't going to get sick. Right. And I had breast cancer. Had I waited 6 months to go get a mammogram, the doctor's like, this would have been like stage 3 or stage 4. So you have to take care of yourself. You have to make the time to take care of yourself. You have to make those doctor's appointments. You have to lower your stress levels. You have to make sure you're getting enough sleep and that you're making time for eating, because if you want to do all these things for your family, if you truly want to be like, oh, I do all these things for my family, you have to have the energy and the health in order to do that. So it's so crucial. And I feel like there is a slight shift that's starting to happen where women are starting to do this more seriously. And I love, Sherry, that you get up in the morning and do it first thing. That is how I got into it too. I remember talking to a business coach about 2016, I think it was, when I was working with her, and she was very big on morning routines. And she was like, just try it. Because I was like insisting, like, I can't wake up any earlier than 7 o'clock and we have to be out the door by 8:30 to get my kids to school. And she was like, try waking up at 6:30. And then it was 6. And then it was 5:30.
Look at you now.
Yeah. And now it's like 4:30 in the morning and I'm like, let's do this day, and my husband's like getting ready for work. He's like, why are you awake and energetic right now? And it doesn't have to be at 4 o'clock in the morning. It could be, again, it doesn't have to take a ton of time. I also do like a 10-minute type meditation on the Calm app. I try to do it daily. It doesn't always happen daily, but it's 10 minutes. If you can wake up 10 minutes earlier, or let's say 15, so you have time to kind of let yourself together and get the app out, then you spend 10 minutes and then you go get your kids up. And you've done something for yourself. And back to a previous part of the conversation, meditation is a great way to help increase the amount of dopamine in your system also. So if you're looking, again, for non-medicated ways to help with your executive function or your ADHD, like meditation is a really great way to do that.
For our listeners that are feeling inspired, but now want to understand the how do you recommend, or is there an exercise that you give your clients to create? It can be a morning routine or just time for themselves. Because listening to this, I'm like, yes, this is amazing. So many people get up and I love whatever you said, like the rocket ship, or you shot out of bed and it's right into the day. How could we give them a little bit of guidance, not homework, but even a journal entry of like, write about your ideal day? Do you have any recommendations like that?
Yeah, well, not anything specifically, because I am very much about it's very personal, right? What is important for me to master is going to be different from Sherry, is going to be different from Val, like everybody's going to kind of be a little bit different. So I like to think kind of in categories. All right. So movement, get some sort of movement, whatever that is. It could be turning on music in your basement and dancing around. It could be, I like to do workouts on YouTube because they're free and I can do them in my basement and it doesn't wake my kids up and I don't have to actually put shoes on if I don't want to and go to the gym. I can just literally do it in my basement, right? And some sort of mental stimulation or mindfulness exercise. So to your point, do you want to visualize your day? Do you want to do some affirmations? Do you want to do a gratitude practice? And again, none of these things take a ton of time. The workouts I do are like 15 minutes long. And then I spend like 5 minutes in a gratitude practice. And then I spend like 5 minutes on Duolingo. And I spend like 10 minutes meditating. So I've got a little bit of like self-care. I've got a little bit of like bettering myself with the Duolingo and, just sort of like continuing to educate and not feel like I'm just stagnating. And I've got a little bit of movement in working out. And all of that takes me like 40 minutes,
So many people think it's not a workout unless I'm working out for 45 minutes, and like lower the bar for some things. It's okay to lower the bar, because if you get started and you do a 15-minute workout, and you're like, you know what, I've got a little more time, I'm going to key up another 15-minute one because I have the energy, I'm feeling really good. But we sometimes try and start with the bar a lot higher.
Well, yeah. And I think too, that kind of goes back to when I was talking about having a range of expectations. To your point, exactly. 30 minutes would be a great amount of time to work out. 20 minutes is okay. But is it better for me to do 10 minutes and do something? Or is it better for me to do nothing? Well, the answer is it's better for you to do 10 minutes. And the one thing that I've done, and I was talking to a friend of mine that is she's got a doctorate in physical therapy, and she's also a personal trainer. She trains women for fitness competitions. And I said, is 10 to 15 minutes even worth it? And she was like, do weights. If you're going to do 10 to 15 minutes, do weights and just keep making your weights higher and higher. And if you do that, not only is it really important, especially for women after 40, to lift weights because of bone density and just you're going to start to lose muscle mass and all that kind of stuff. It's also a way that you can kind of keep squeezing in those workouts in shorter periods of time, but making them harder and harder without making it longer and longer.
I love that. And I think we could really talk forever, but I know we want to be respectful of your time and our listeners' time. And these have been some great tips. And I love just starting with the foundation of the time tracking and the alignment between time and money. And it resonates with me so much. And I'm sure it will for our listeners too. So it's been great to have you, Christy. And we're really grateful for all of those tidbits that you shared with us. And thank you to our listeners. And we can't wait to see you next time on the Mind and Money podcast.